All right, what's up guys? In today's video, we're gonna be checking out the brand new PaddleTek GTO-C. They finally decided to make a hybrid, which I'm very excited to see, but there are a few things that you're probably gonna wanna be aware of before you buy one. Now, as always, the specs will be on screen, and I do wanna let you guys know that PaddleTek is temporarily bringing back discount codes for PaddleTek products, so they discontinued them last year, and I think for the next 3 months, you should be able to use code PBStudio to save 10%. I don't know if that only works on the GTO-C or if that works on all PaddleTek products, but either way, if it is only for the GTO-C, you can now pick this up for about $225. So as you can see, just from looking at this paddle, the first thing you're probably gonna notice is that there's a very aggressive neck taper, so it does make it pretty easy to fit 2 hands on the paddle. I would, probably call this about what you would expect for most 5.5-inch handles, maybe a little less than some of those out there, but definitely better than a paddle like the Honolulu J2K where the handle is pretty short. But overall, guys, this is gonna be a very easy video to do because it plays a lot like how the other PaddleTek Bantams did. There's not any new technology inside of these. However, they did redistribute some of the balance to make the paddles play just a little bit differently than the others, but nothing drastic or crazy. The first thing you guys should know is that the steel balls that they have been putting in their paddles for a while now, they actually decided to do 4 steel balls right at 3 and 9 on the 12.7 millimeter, and then on the 14.3 millimeter, it's only 1 steel ball on each side, and it sits right around here on the paddle. So they decided on the 14.3 to do 1 and shift it higher, whereas on the 12.7, there's 4 of them, and they're directly at 3 and 9. So if you looked at the specs of these paddles, the first thing you're probably gonna notice is that the swing weight on the 12.7 millimeter is quite a bit higher than some of their other paddles. We got 3 units, and our first one was 117, the second one was 119, and the third one was 120. And I believe the target swing weight that they're aiming for is right around 120. Now, I already know what everyone in the comments is about to type. They're about to say 120 swing weight for a hybrid. That is completely unacceptable. This paddle is garbage. I'm out. And now, generally speaking, I would agree with that. I think a 120 swing weight for a hybrid is a really odd choice. However, specifically with a lot of Gen 1 paddles, what always ends up happening is they don't play amazing out of the box and people end up having to weight them a lot. And for PaddleTek specifically, 3 and 9 is a very common place that people end up placing the weight. So I don't really mind that they did that. However, it does take away some of the customizability options that you had with paddles like the ESQ or the ALWC. So yes, the 12.7 millimeter does have a higher swing weight, but honestly, it really wasn't bothering me. I wasn't thinking about, oh man, this paddle is just so sluggish, it's so hard to swing. Would I have liked to see it lower? Yeah, I probably would have, but I still think this paddle is plenty playable and a lot of people would still really enjoy it. So if you are someone who loves to tinker, then the GTO-C might be less for you. However, if you're just someone who wants the paddle to play great out of the box, then I think PaddleTek did a pretty good job with how this paddle plays. And as far as the 12.7 millimeter goes, I mean, it hits very hard just like all PaddleTeks do. I did find that while we were playing with them, I was actually really struggling with some of my counters or blocks. Like the pop off the face was just launching the ball way out of bounds. And it was something that I was kind of struggling to adjust to. I'm sure if we were to use this paddle for a longer period of time, I probably would start adjusting and getting the ball down. But just be aware, very poppy, very powerful, and that's likely due to just placing more weight inside this paddle than the other Bantams have had traditionally. And then as far as the 14.3 millimeter goes, that plays quite a bit softer, both in feel and the pop off the face. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a control paddle, but if you're comparing the 12.7 and the 14.3, the 14.3 almost feels like it's the control version of this one. I think a lot of people would struggle a lot less to use the 14.3 millimeter. And if you did look at the specs, the 14.3 has a lower swing weight than the 12.7 due to having less of those weighted balls inside of the paddle. Those are coming in right around 115, which is more in line with what you would expect for a traditional hybrid. So basically, if you're already familiar with the Bantam line, 12.7 gonna play very aggressive for the bangers out there that love to end points quickly. They love to poach, they love to drive, they love big counters at the net. This is gonna do that extremely well. And then the 14.3 millimeter is gonna be a bit more of that all-arounder paddle where it isn't going to be super aggressive, but definitely still has some good offense for what it is. And it's gonna be a lot easier for most people to use. The one thing I think I did notice is that I actually found the stability and the sweet spot size to feel better on the 12.7 for me, and a lot of that is likely due to having more of the weighted balls. The twist weight is just a lot higher on the 12.7 millimeter. So do keep that in mind. I know that's kind of traditionally backwards to how most paddles are, but since they're adding more weight inside of this one, that's kind of to be expected. Now, the other thing that I'm sure many of you have heard since the Bantams have come out is I would still say these are better suited for higher level players who are consistently hitting the center of their paddle. This paddle still has that dead spot at the top that PaddleTeks have kind of been known for. With Gen 1 paddles compared to Gen 2, 3, and even some of these Gen 4 paddles, the sweet spots are just tighter than a lot of other paddles out there these days. So I think for people to be able to best maximize this, it's going to come from some of those higher level players who don't have as much issue hitting the center of the paddle. And as far as spin goes, I would say this is still great. It's up there with all of the other Bantams that are on the market. I wouldn't say it's any different from how those play, and all the previous ones got awesome spin. Just like the other PaddleTeks, another big reason that people love to buy these is the durability of them. They have tended to remain very consistent over the lifespan of the paddle, unlike a lot of Gen 3 paddles out there. And for some people, that's really appealing. You don't have to worry about core crushing on these. They aren't changing on you from the first week to the second week to the third week. They remain very stable, and they do also have a lifetime warranty, which is really nice. The only thing I will say is that durability has gotten a lot better this year in pickleball. So with a lot of companies shifting over to foam cores, those have been showing to be very durable, or definitely way better than Gen 3 paddles out there. The carbon true foam, I've used mine for a really long time at this point, still no issues. I know a lot of people who have used them without issues. Of course, stuff comes up here and there, but the rate at which issues are happening compared to Gen 3s, significantly lower with foam. So I think the selling point of these being more durable is always a good one, but with the foam core paddles catching up and a lot of the prices on those dropping significantly, I think that's going to make this stand out just a little bit less in that department. Now, really quickly, I'm just gonna kind of summarize the PaddleTek lineup at this point so you can kind of decide which one is the better one for you. So you have the ALWC, which is a standard shape or wide body with a slightly shorter handle. So if you're someone who doesn't love long handles, that's the one you're gonna pick. And it's also great for people who are really wanting to excel in hand speed and have a larger sweet spot. And the same thing is to be said for the ESQC, which is also a standard shape / wide body, but it has a longer handle than the ALWC. So if you're wanting more space for a two-handed backhand, that's the one that I would pick. Then after that, you have the TKO-C and the TKO-CX, and the same thing basically applies to how it did with the last two paddles I was talking about. The TKO-C is an elongated paddle with a bigger face and a slightly shorter handle. And then the TKO-CX has a very long handle for those that want a two-handed backhand. You're gonna have no issues putting two hands on the TKO-CX. Honestly, even on the TKO-C, it's really not that bad. So it just kind of comes down to what handle length you want, and if you just prefer elongated paddle. And now finally, you've got the GTO-C, which is that hybrid that's gonna sit in between the wide body and the elongated. So if you are a really big fan of the hybrid shape, and you like what hybrids bring to the table, then these are gonna be great. So yeah, to date, I would say that the GTO-C is probably my favorite PaddleTek. I think if I had to pick between all of the options, it would be between the ESQC and the GTO-C. I think the biggest thing I would probably struggle with on the GTO-C is, again, just keeping that ball down and keeping it in. It was very, very jumpy off the face, and I didn't have that issue as much with the ESQC. It found I could just get the ball down easier, and when I would go for a block, it wasn't just sailing completely long. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to decide which one is for you. But yeah, those are the two I would probably pick. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.